slavery, we're going to discuss the Atlantic slave trade, how it began, and its impact on the colonies. Slavery began due to the introduction of the plantation system in the South, and it became a major institution in the present-day United States, or the times during colonization. And the institution itself will stick around until the end of the Civil War in the late 1800s. Geography is actually one of the major proponents in slavery because it allowed for these plantations and widespread growth of crops. People felt like there was a need for cheap labor or free labor in order to make a profit on these plantations. Between the 1500s and 1800s, 10 million Africans were forcibly brought to the Americas from the West African coast, in part of the triangular trade system, which we'll take a look at next. It's important to note forcibly brought here. It's not like they thought, hey, let's go to the Americas and make a living for ourselves, and they were tricked into something. They had people that were paid to kidnap or catch people and forcibly bring them onto ships to come here to work at their life's expense. This is the slavery triangular trade system. Not only were slaves traded, but also goods. This contributed to a lot of the Columbian exchange, where we get a lot of goods going back and forth. But not only the introduction of those goods, but also a trade network where you can make money. So this included the Americas, Caribbean, Europe, and Africa. It's considered a triangle because the Caribbean and Americas are on one plane of the triangle. You'd go across, up, and down, and goods went both ways. So something would come in and out of each region. Goods like sugarcane would come from the Caribbean, go to the Americas or to Europe. You'd swing back around to get slaves. They would come to North America, and then North America would ship out things like wheat, cotton, also weapons, back and forth. So a number of things went across, but this just shows you the general pattern of what was being traded. One thing that's often spoken about in the slave trade is the Middle Passage. This refers to the trip across the Atlantic Ocean, which was extremely inhumane, very dangerous, very disgusting, and very cruel. Africans were bound by their feet and hands, and they traveled in the bottoms of ships layered on top of each other. So they would fit hundreds and hundreds of people where you maybe were only supposed to put a few, just literally laid on top of each other like objects. The conditions were extremely poor, so diseases went rampant. Death rates were very high. People would get sick and you just throw them overboard to get rid of them, or they would just stay there until someone noticed. A very horrific experience. One African who did travel on the Middle Passage, Alauda Akinyo, is famous for writing about his experiences, and we'll actually take a look at some of his writings about that journey. So there is primary source documentation of this type of journey. So what type of impact did slavery have? Due to the prospering of the Caribbean, slavery became more popular in the Americas. So they saw how successful sugarcane was due to the institution of slavery and cheap labor. And so the Americas in the South developed an economy that depended on slavery, or so they thought. And this dependence on slavery and their economy to run the way that it had, and for the Americas to be this growing, prosperous place, made slavery incredibly controversial, not only because of its inhumanity, but also, the Americas is so successful based on these crops, but the way that they got there was with cheap labor. So when we talk about the Civil War, we'll go back into that again. Laws within the colonies actually enforced slavery as a legal institution, saying this is legal, you can do it, basically because it made them money. Everything comes down to money and power, and slavery was a stepping stone to get that money and power. Slavery will become a controversial social and economic issue for times to come, just like I explained. It also led to one of the most bloody wars in the history of our nation, where we almost divided in half in the Civil War. So something crazy to think about how the success of one crop based on this incredible geography in our country led to this type of inhumanity and controversy.